And Moshe said, Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh is one, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart. And you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise up. And shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to everyone worshiping with us at home. I'm really excited about the message today because I'll tell you this. As a rule, I try not to get up here and preach at an individual. I have done it. But it always makes me uncomfortable. It always makes me uncomfortable. But there have been several times where after messages like that, I'll get approached. They'll come walking up. And the individual will usually walk up to me and say something like, I appreciate that. I really needed to hear that message. And I'll thank them and I'll give the esteem to Elohim for and be grateful to be a messenger of help. The biggest problem is that most of the time when an individual calls up and thanks me for the message and tells me that they appreciated it, it's usually not the person that I was preaching at. You know? And it's funny how that works. But today I want to make it clear that I am indeed speaking to two individuals in particular. Yep. Today I'm speaking to Mike and Nancy. And yes, as individuals. Because tomorrow, Mike and Nancy will be joined in marriage and become one. Now let me be clear. I'm also preaching at every husband and wife as well as every single person who thinks they might become married one of these days. Right? Now, Bob and Barbara, and I'm glad they're joining us today, once told us about a friend that they wanted to bring to Passover, and we were introduced to Mike at the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and I spoke to Mike before he came. Mike's been a feast keeper for a very long time, and for a long time he's been seeking the face of Yahweh. But he expressed to me that it had been placed on his heart that he needed to be immersed in the set-apart names. And we discussed things, and he was immersed in the set-apart names that year when he came down. And I've got to tell you, I have found Mike to be just a great guy. Most of all, he loves Yahweh. But he is friendly and kind and selfless. He's good-natured. He's very personable. He's helpful. And in my estimation, a good brother and a man of Yahweh. Amen? Hallelujah. And I have no reason to believe that he will make anything other than a fine husband as well. And he has many talents and abilities, but beyond that, he possesses the most important quality missing in most men in the world today. He has a love and a devotion for Yahweh Elohim. And above all those talents that he has, and skills and abilities that Yahweh's blessed him with, it's because of his love of Yahweh that I believe that he will be a loving and devoted husband that Yahweh expects, and that a daughter of Yisrael like Nancy deserves. And I can tell you that Mike really loves Nancy. Another skill that Mike has shown himself to have is to have the ability to recognize a good thing when it comes along. And he's done that with Nancy. Right? The first time we met Nancy was at the Feast of Tabernacles in 2014 in person. First time we met her in person. And she was a guest, and she could have continued to act like a guest, but she jumped right in and started acting like a member of the family and pitching in and helping. And helping is what a helpmate or helpmate does. Nancy is a real sweetheart. Amen? Right? And she too has a love and devotion for Yahweh. She is friendly. And she is selfless. And she also is kind. She has a great sense of humor, and she loves people. She loves little people. And she too has many talents and skills and abilities. And above all of these talents and skills and abilities that Yahweh's blessed her with, it is because of her love for and her devotion to Yahweh that I believe that she will be a loving wife like Yahweh expects, and that a son of Yisrael like Mike deserves. Right? And Nancy really loves Mike too. And I also want to say that over the course of this last year, Mike and Nancy have been very committed, haven't they, Meemaw? Have been very committed to following a program of very rigorous premarital counseling, which involved a lot of homework, which they did. That's pretty amazing. And they did it. But they have shown a real commitment to making this a great marriage. And it is my belief and hope that these two will continue to grow closer and closer to each other as they grow closer and closer to Yahweh, and that they will have a wonderful life together. Now, no marriage can survive on love alone. Nope. It takes work, and it will always take work. Now you two are in agreement with one another. But it should be a labor of love, and it will pay great dividends and bring in much joy. Just real quickly, turn with me to Proverbs 18. Proverbs 18, we're just going to read one verse. It's close to 19. Proverbs 18, we'll be on page 744, verse 22. He who has found a wife has found good and receives favor from Yahweh. Hallelujah. Here's the thing, though. How many of you in our society are thinking that in our society that it's operating in accordance with Yahweh's system? Let me see a show of hands. No folks have their hands up here. You folks at home. Well, if it's not working according to Yahweh's system, then whose system is it working according to? Ha-Satan, huh? Satan's also been responsible, too, for messing up the roles between men and women. And if a marriage is going to make it according to Yahweh's design, we have to recognize this. We have to recognize this, all right? Now, many things are out of order with regard to men and women in our society. Yahweh's design is not built on ideas that are advanced in modern social constructs. And I know that this is not politically correct to say. All right, but what did we say earlier today? The truth is not politically correct. All right? But how much of political correctness is founded on Yahweh's standard anyway? You know? All right? Satan has been causing problems between men and women ever since there was a man and a woman. All right? And what I want to do today, among other things, is to look at that situation and see what we can learn from it so that we learn from it. All right? Because listen, it's a lot better idea to learn from somebody else's mistakes than it is to have to make those mistakes and learn from them yourself. Amen. Turn with me to Genesis chapter 2. We're going to talk about the first time there was a man and a woman. Look at Bereshit chapter 2. We're going to start reading in verse 15, and we're going to be on page 2, incidentally. Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. And Yahweh Elohim took the man, and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to guard it. And Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, saying, Eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall certainly die. Me, Mom? The person that wanted to be on the Kindle with us, are they with us? Okay. All right. Now, think about this. I can see Yahweh up there saying something like, I wonder what my man's doing today. Let's go see. And while they're looking down, I can just imagine Yahweh saying something like, oh, there he is. What's he up to? Oh, no. He's not going to do that, is he? Oh, yep, he did. It is not good for the man to be alone. I'm going to make a helper for him. All right? So let's pick back up at verse 18. And Yahweh Elohim said, it's not good for the man to be alone. I am going to make a co-equal to create democracy and to form a more perfect union and to add gender diversity to the male-dominated workforce. Is that what yours says? Mine, I see what it says. I am going to make a helper for him as his counterpart. All right? Now, I've got something I want to share with you today. That word helper is the word Azer. That's where we get like Ebenezer. That word there, that means rock of my help. All right? Now, Azer is spelled like this in modern Hebrew. All right? It is spelled Ayin, Zayin, Resh. All right? Now, in the pictograph, I want to look at that. But when we look at the letters tell us something about what the word means. Okay? And when we look at what these letters mean, we'll look at what they do. Okay? Now, in the ancient pictograph, an ayin is an eye. Okay? And then the zayin is a weapon or a tool. All right? And the resh is the head of a man. All right? Now, the ayin is an eye. Now, what does an eye do? It watches, it looks, it sees. All right? Now, what do you, not a bad guy, okay? What do you use a weapon for? For protection. What do you use a tool for? To do work, right? All right? So the zayin, it represents work and protection, all right? And the resh, the head, means the head. It also means number one or the first of something, okay? Now, and for instance, it can also mean leader, the resh. Now, pictographically, a helper should watch and protect the head, or watch and work with the head. All right? That's what she was created for. That's what she was created for. All right? To watch and protect or work with her counterpart. Now, picking back up in Genesis 2:19. And from the ground, Yahweh Elohim formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called each living creature, that was its name. So the man gave names to all livestock and to the birds of the heavens and every beast of the field, but for the man there was not found a helper, Ezer, for him as a counterpart. So Yahweh Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall on the man, and he slept and took one of his ribs And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place, and the rib which Yahweh Elohim had taken from the man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. And the man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one is called woman because she was taken out of man," or Isha. All right. Now, note that she did not walk up and introduce herself and say something like, "I am Isha, hear me roar." All right? Just saying. Elohim brought her to the man like every other creature, and he pronounced what she would be called. All right? Now we're going to turn to chapter 3, verse 1. "And the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which Yahweh Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, 'Is it true that Elohim has said, do not eat of every tree of the garden?'" Right? So he asks her a question which immediately answers, demonstrating that she understands the Torah concerning this tree by giving the correct answer. But watch this. Verse 2, "And the woman said to the serpent, we are to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die." Okay, so she's demonstrated. She knows what the deal is, right? Right? Now, her name in Hebrew is Hawa. All right. So when I say Hawa, you'll know where it says Eve in your KJVs and other versions. All right. Some have supposed that Hawa added to the Torah when she said not to eat nor touch. Nor touch. And I'm not sure why it's a big deal for some people that they are concerned about whether she added to it or not. But I think there's something more that we have to consider as we look at this. It's quite possible that it was Adam, it was quite possible that it was Adam who, while teaching her about the tree in the midst of the garden, because he did love her, was the one who added, don't even touch it, to the Torah. And she was repeating what Adam said. Or Yahweh could have said that to them in a conversation that we're just not privy to in the Scriptures. That's another possibility. Nevertheless, she knew the rules and the severity of the transgression. All right? Verse 4. All right? "And the serpent said to the woman," in other words, the serpent begins to instruct her. She knows what the deal is, but he starts to instruct her. "You shall not certainly die, for Elohim knows that in the day that you eat of it, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be like Elohim, knowing good and evil." And what are those next two words? The woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree, what's that next word? Desirable to make one wise, and she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Now, note carefully who it was that saw that the tree was all of these things. Hawa. And what did she do? She desired. It was her desire. It does not say anything about Adam found it desirable. Amen? Verse 7. "Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loin coverings for themselves. And they heard the sound of Yahweh Elohim walking about in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh Elohim among the trees of the garden. And Yahweh Elohim called unto Adam and said to him, Where are you?" Do you fellas remember what we did last first day of the week? We presented ourselves. We appeared before Yahweh. Yahweh calls us up 3 times in the year. He's calling him up here. Verse 10, "And he said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked. So I hid myself. And he said, Who made you know that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree of which I commanded that you should not eat?" Now, I want to look at this seriously and not make a joke about, for those of you who know that's coming next, that woman that you gave to be with me. This was serious. Y'all know the joke I'm talking about, right? All right. This was serious, and Adam and Hawa were afraid. Amen? All right? And they hid themselves. I wonder if we ever think that we're hiding from Yahweh. He can't see us. Anyway, I'm sure that everybody knew that Yahweh meant business at this time. Amen? All right, verse 12. And the man said, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate. And Yahweh said to the woman, what is this you have done? And the woman said, the serpent deceived me. In other words, he caused me to convince myself that it was all right to transgress the Torah. And I ate. And Yahweh Elohim said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all livestock and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you are to go and eat dust all the days of your life. And I put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed, and he shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. And to the woman he said, I greatly increase your sorrow and your conception, bring forth children in pain, and your, see that word, desire. There's that word again, desire, and this time Yahweh is using it. All right? And your desire is for your husband, and he does rule over you. All right, now this is not talking about desire for Adam because he's such a hunk. Okay? That's not what this is about. Whose desire did Hawa follow that started all the trouble? Her own. Yahweh takes it back to her problem with her desire and says, and your desire is for your husband, and he does rule over you. Remember what she was created for? To complete him as a counterpart. They're supposed to be one, all right? Now, this is not talking about sexual desire here. It's talking about decision-making and seeking our own versus doing what Yahweh has specifically created her for and seeking what's best for the family as a whole, even though we're just two people in it right now, with Yahweh supposed to be in the middle. And that is why it incorporates this part about who rules over whom. All right, verse 17. And to the man he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife, and I want to interject here, who was in transgression. All right, we're going to talk about this a little bit in a minute, but it's not because he was just listening to her. It was because he listened to her while she was in transgression. Because this is not about don't ever listen to your wife. All right. And have eaten of the tree which I commanded you, saying, do not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you are to eat of it all the days of your life. By the sweat of your face you are to eat bread until you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you return. Okay? So, what was Hawa's sin? After demonstrating that she knew what the command was, she put her own desire ahead of him, and his head too, by the way, and caused the whole family to transgress the command of Elohim. Right? She did not protect her head for which she was created. Right? She talked Adam into transgressing it with her. She abandoned everything at the suggestion that there was more for the taking than what Yahweh said to take. You know, he said that they could have everything except one thing. Golly. Don't you wish you could go back? All right? What if the woman had said something to the serpent like, look, I know you got little bitty ears on the side of your head, but did you not hear what I said? The command is, do not eat of it nor touch it lest you die. Mr. No Shoulders. and I'm going to tell Adam about this. And you need to get out of my face. That's something that we can learn from this example right here. You need to get out of my face. How different things might be. So what was Adam's sin? Takes two to tango in this situation. Takes two to tango anyway, unless you're just breakdancing then, aren't you? Well, there were several. Foremost was the fact that Adam did not keep the Torah which Yahweh had commanded him. Right? Next was the fact that he did not take care of his woman. Now, why do I say his woman? That's not politically correct to say either. All right? Why did I say his woman? Well, see, she wasn't some girl just flitting around the garden, you know, and he'd see her every once in a while. She was made from him and for him. And she was brought to him. And Adam himself said, the woman that you gave me. All right. Adam was given the Torah, and it was his duty to take care of the woman who had been given to him. All right? And Adam failed to do this. But wait, there's more. Yahweh said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife. Now, do you suppose that Adam had been instructed to never ever listen to his wife, and that all he was all he was supposed to do was lecture to her, and you know, and she was not allowed to speak to him? Do we really think that? Of course not. Listened to here means allowed yourself to be persuaded by what she said, all right, or by what you heard. So there was something wrong with what Hawa said to Adam that he listened to. Amen? All right? Now, though it's possible that she tucked her little chin down like this and batted her eyes at Adam and said something like, come on, Adam, be my big boy. Open wide and take a big bite. That's a good boy. All right? That's not likely. It's possible. It's possible. All right? It's also possible that she said something like this. Come on, Adam. Don't you want to be like Elohim? Or do you want to keep running around the garden like the rest of the dumb beasts? Or don't you want your eyes to be open? Hey, I didn't die, did I? My eyes are open, and now I know good and evil. Look, I don't want to be the only one running around here with the knowledge, but hey, I've got mine, you know, and it hasn't killed me, and unless you want to be left out, you're going to have to eat this too. Am I going to have to be the only enlightened one around here? Come on, take it, or you're never going to hear the end of this. Fine then. Give it here. What'd y'all say? He's never going to hear the end of it. That's right. And he says, fine, give it here. All right? She talked him into it. Whatever she said, Yahweh said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree that I commanded you, saying, do not eat. However it happened, she talked him into it. All right? Now, he did not take care of her. He did not say no. He did not insist on righteousness and keeping the Torah. He did not rule his house. She talked him into it. He knowingly transgressed the Torah and now has been cursed in life unto death for listening to a deceived wife who was putting her own desires ahead of Yahweh's and allowing her to persuade him into doing that which he knows is wrong rather than being a man and taking the lead to follow Yahweh. And Adam did not lead in word, and he did not lead by example. And that was Adam's sin. And who did he let down? Everybody. Everybody. Everybody except the serpent, that is. Just saying. And so, the Torah of Elohim was effectively broken that day. By the way, this message is not a message to say that men are always right. It's not a message to say that men are always right and our women are always trying to get us to break the Torah, okay? This message is about what happens when we don't stand up for Yahweh as Adam did not stand up for Yahweh. All right? And I have to ask, gentlemen, do we ever do the same thing? If the answer is yes, don't feel alone. You see, sometimes people chuckle about what we're going to look at next. But I don't think Shlomo was trying to be funny when he said this. Proverbs 21, it's going to be close to verse 7. Proverbs 21, page 746. We're going to start reading in verse 9. It is better to dwell on a corner of a roof than in a house shared with a contentious woman. Verse 19. It is better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and vexed woman. I don't think he was trying to be funny when he said that. Right? But people are like electricity. They will take the path of least resistance. And men will oftentimes suffer angst in their spirit and say, fine then. Just to get the contentiousness. And that's a nice way of saying the griping and the fussing and the complaining, which is a nice way of saying something else. To cease. Right? It's better to dwell in the corner of a roof. It's better to dwell in the wilderness. A man gives in to his wife, and then 3 times in the year, gentlemen, as the head of the house, just like Adam, he goes as head and presents himself before Yahweh Elohim, Almighty, the Sovereign, above all heaven and earth, and gives an account of how he is doing taking care of that woman that you gave me. Is that showing love to your husband, or is that showing selfish desire? Remember, he's going for you before Yahweh. All right? Now let me stress, ladies, we are not talking about when you give him right and righteous counsel. My wife frequently tells me how it's... my wife frequently tells me right things and gives me wise counsel, of which I am very appreciative. And you know what? I listen to her voice. She's watching and protecting her head. Because sometimes I'm fixing to jump off the ledge. All right. But you see, some women, and did you hear me say some and not all? Okay, I want to make sure we hear that, because I know when I come down off this podium, some women, though they would never verbalize this, not this way, they expect for their husbands to serve them. They expect their husbands to serve them, the wife, ahead of serving Elohim, and to make them, the wife, to be obeyed rather than Elohim. And that's a dangerous thing to do. You can turn here with me if you want. Acts 5:29. Peter said, it says, and Kepha and the other emissaries answering said, we have to obey Elohim rather than men. Okay? And a woman is a female version of the man. Okay? There are two things that I want to mention before I go any further. First is that there are examples in the Scriptures of men not listening to the righteous counsel of their wives and suffering the consequences for it. All right? But we also see Yahweh even instructing Abraham to listen to the voice of his wife. All right? Look at Genesis 21. Bereshit 21. I'm going to start reading verse 9. It's going to be on page 19. Genesis 21, verse 9. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Mitzrite, whom she had borne to Abraham, mocking. So she said to Abraham, drive out this female servant and her son, for the son of this female servant shall not inherit with my son, with Yitzhak. And the matter was very evil in the eyes of Abraham because of his son. But Elohim said to Abraham, let it not be evil in your eyes because of the boy and because of your female servant. Whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice. For in Yitzhak your seed is called. All right? That's why we know right there that it was not improper for Adam to listen to his wife. Amen? All right? His problem was that he listened to her in wrongness. He did not rule and permitted unrighteousness. The second thing is this. A contentious man is no better than a contentious woman. Can I get an amen, ladies? So that's how I kind of get off the hook. I think men would agree. You ever been around a contentious man at work? And all right. So before we snicker too much about being on the corner of the rooftop, let's consider the following. Proverbs 26. We're going to be close to verse 19. Proverbs 26. We're going to be on page 751. Verse 20. For lack of wood the fire goes out, and without a slanderer strife ceases. As charcoal is to burning coals and wood to a fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. Listen, it's no better to have a grumbly, fussing, griping, complaining, can't see any joy in anything kind of man in the house either. That'll run her up on the rooftop. Okay? So, Yahweh's not satisfied. You know, He wants us to have joy and love one another and have peace in our homes, all right? Or wherever. All right? Now, turn with me to Proverbs 31. And we're going to start reading in verse 1. Really, we can start in verse 10. Proverbs 31, verse 10. Who does find a capable wife? For she is worth far more than rubies. I got one like that. The heart of her husband shall trust her, and he has no lack of gain. She shall do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She shall seek wool and flax, and with delight she works with her hands. She shall be as the ships of Tarshish. She brings in her food from afar. She also rises while it's still night and provides food for her household and a portion for her girls. She shall consider a field and buy it. From her profits she shall plant a vineyard. She shall gird herself with strength and strengthen her arms. She shall taste when her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out by night. She shall stretch out her hands to the distaff, and her hand shall hold the spindle. She shall extend her hand to the poor, and she shall reach out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is dressed in scarlet. She shall make tapestries for herself. She is dressed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates, when he sits among the elders of the land. She shall make fine linen and sell them, and shall give girdles for the merchants. Strength and splendor are her garments, and she rejoices in time to come. She shall, oh look at this, men, open her mouth with wisdom. You see that? She shall open her mouth with wisdom. You need to listen to the voice of your wife when she opens her mouth with wisdom. Amen? All right. And her tongue is the Torah of kindness. Verse 27. She watches over the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children shall rise up and call her blessed, her husband too, and he praises her. Many daughters have done nobly, but you have risen over them all. Loveliness is deceptive and prettiness is vain. A woman who fears Yahweh is to be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. What a helpmeet or helpmate. Amen? You want to take care of a helpmate like this. All right? Because she's taking care of you. And one of the best ways to keep that going is for you to take care of her. Amen? All right. Now, I've got something that I want to read to you before we go into the next passage. Now, this is quite interesting. This is from the book For Women Only. And I'm going to look in it. I'm going to look in it. But I'm just going to read part of it here. The name of this chapter is called Your Love Is Not Enough. I think I kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier in the message. She said, when I was this is by Shanti Feldham. When I was a year or two out of college, I went on a retreat that profoundly impacted my understanding of men. You listening, girls? The theme of the retreat was, quote, relationships, which, as you can imagine, was of great interest to a group of single young adults. For the very first session, the retreat speaker divided the room in half and placed the men on one side and the women on the other. I'm going to ask you to choose between two bad things, he said. If you had to choose, would you rather feel alone and unloved in the world, or would you rather feel inadequate and disrespected by everyone? I remember thinking, what kind of choice is that? Who would ever choose to feel unloved? The speaker then turned to the men's side of the room. Okay, men, who here would rather feel alone and unloved? A sea of hands went up, and a giant gasp rippled across the women's side of the room. He asked which men would rather feel disrespected, and the women watched in bemusement as only a few men lifted their hands. Then it was our turn to answer, and the men's turn to be shocked when most of the women indicated that they would rather feel inadequate and disrespected than unloved. Now you see, that was something that took place without him setting it up. He just divided and asked the question. And the unprepared participants answered the questions. All right? But you see, Paul knew this. Turn with me to Ephesians chapter 5. I think we're going to read this whole chapter just for good measure. Ephesians chapter 5, we'll start in verse 1. on page 1135. Become then imitators of Elohim as beloved children, and walk in love as Messiah also has loved us and gave himself for us, a gift and an offering to Elohim for a sweet-smelling fragrance. I think that's an important part of this for us to remember, because Paul's going to mention it again in a little bit. But whoring and all uncleanliness or greed of gain, let it not even be named among you as is proper among set-apart ones. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather thanksgiving. For this you know, that no one who whores, nor unclean one, nor one greedy of gain, who is an idolater, has an inheritance in the reign of Messiah and Elohim. Let no one deceive you with the empty words, for because of these the wrath of Elohim comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore do not become partakers with them. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Master. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, proving what is well-pleasing to the Master. And have no fellowship with the fruitless works of darkness, but rather reprove them, for it is a shame even to speak of what is done by them in secret. But all matters being reproved are manifested by the light, for whatever is manifested is light. That is why he says, wake up, you who sleep, and arise from the dead, and Messiah shall shine on you. See then that you walk exactly, not as unwise, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are wicked. Do you realize that Paul's actually kind of describing the difference? He isn't specifically talking about the garden here, but he's talking about what we should be doing versus what we could be doing, and which one's right in the eyes of Yahweh and which one's wrong in the eyes of Yahweh. And he's sending us right back here to being righteous. Amen. All right. Verse 17. So then, do not be foolish, but understand what the desire of Yahweh is. And do not be drunk with wine, in which is loose behavior, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to each other in psalms and songs of praise and spiritual songs, singing and striking the strings in your heart to the Master, giving thanks always for all to Elohim the Father in the name of the Master Yeshua Messiah, subjecting yourselves to each other in the fear of Elohim. Now look, wives, subject yourself to your own husbands as to the Master, because the husband is the head of the wife, as also the Messiah is head of the assembly, and he is Savior of the body. But as the assembly is subject to Messiah, so also let the wives be to their own husbands in every respect. Now, there are some men who think that because they are a man, pretty much for nothing else, because they are a man, that this means that they are a king who is supposed to be bowed before and served and ruled with an iron fist. They have an attitude of like, if I want anything out of you, I'll tell you what to make for supper. By the same token, there are women who are like, I want him to be the head of my house. And I'll make sure he does it the way I say or else. All right? And that's not going to work either. All right? You are supposed to be a cod. You're supposed to be one. You are supposed to be a team, and there is no what in team? I. There's no I in team. But men, she has been created to be your helper, and that includes walking in paths of righteousness. So don't cast aside your helper. She is a watchman that Yahweh has set up in your kingdom of your home to watch her head. Listen to her counsel. Mike and everybody else. She's only doing what Yahweh made her to do and doing what Hawa failed to do. Think about that. What we're about to read is what we should do. No matter that it's contrary to what some men expect. Verse 25. Husbands, love your wives, as Messiah also did love the assembly, and what are those next four words? Gave himself for it. In order to set it apart and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, in order to present it to himself a splendid assembly, not having spot or wrinkle or any of this sort, but that it might be set apart and blameless. In this way, husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but feeds and, what are those next two words? Cherishes it. Ladies, do you like to be cherished? Okay. Men, do you like to be respected? Yeah. Now look, ladies like to be respected too. And men like to be, they don't like to say cherished, but they like to be loved. Verse 29 again. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but feeds and cherishes it, as also the master does the assembly, because we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause a man shall leave his father and mother, and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This secret is great, but I speak to you concerning Messiah and the assembly. However, you too, everyone, let each one love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she fears her husband. Is that not what we just read when the guy walked in the room and asked everybody what was important? Interesting, isn't it? It is a man's job to serve. It's a man's job to serve. A man's not supposed to be a deadbeat. A man's not supposed to be a couch potato. A man's not supposed to be a ne'er-do-well that just sits around and expounds on the lofty platitudes of the Scriptures. He's supposed to be a servant king and lead his home. And a righteous king who cherishes and loves his wife as his own body. Nancy, Mike is blessed. We're all blessed, amen? All right? And Mike, I want to commend you for finding a princess of Yahweh. I've got a challenge for both of you. Are you sitting down? That's a good sign. That means you're not running out, you know. If you will be one, love as one, work as one, serve Yahweh as one. If you will keep Yahweh first and continue in the roles that He created for you, if Mike, you lead and cherish, and Nancy, if you watch and work and protect your head, you will go forth and do great things and have a wonderful life together. And I pray that Yahweh blesses you both in the things that you put your hands to as you serve Him and you make a life together and go on all these adventures and it's going to be great. The vows that we vow are forever. And we should always remember forever what we did and what we do when we said and say, I do. Yevrakeka Yahweh Baish Mareka Ya'er Yahweh Panavaleka Bikuneka Yasa Yahweh Panavaleka Biasem Laka Shalom. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make His face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up His face upon you and give you His complete contentment.